Annie Walsh hated clowns. Always had. Their painted-on joy, the way their eyes glittered like wet marbles, the wrongness of a mouth stretched too wide. But her son, Ben, loved them. Loved their chaos, their candy-colored chaos, their balloon animals twisted into screaming shapes. It was why she'd agreed to take him to the Maple Hollow Fall Festival. Even as the autumn sky bruised purple and the air smelled of rotting pumpkins. 1 hour, she'd said, checking her phone for the 10th time. The festival was half empty, the rides creaking like arthritic bones. Ben, 8 years old and still wearing his astronaut Halloween costume from last year, tugged her toward a faded striped tent. Carnival games, the sign screamed, its letters peeling. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of cotton candy and mildew. That's where she saw him. The clown stood behind the ring toss booth, motionless. His suit was a violent purple, patched at the elbows. His face was powdered corpse white, lips sewn into a permanent crimson smirk. But his eyes, Annie froze. His eyes were black, not dark brown, not shadowed. Black, like holes punched through paper. Ben didn't seem to notice. He giggled, tossing a rubber ring at a bottle. The clown's head swiveled toward her son, slow, mechanical. "Step right up, little hero," the clown rasped. His voice sounded like a record played backward. "Win a prize for Mommy." Annie's skin prickled. "Ben, let's go." "But I want to play." The clown leaned over the counter, his neck elongating like taffy. A moth crawled out of his ruffled collar. "All the good children play," he whispered. She grabbed Ben's arm, yanking him away. Behind them, the clown's laughter followed, sharp and wet, like a dog choking on a bone. That night, Annie woke to the sound of giggling. Not Ben's giggle. This was higher, shrill, wrong. She followed it to his bedroom door, her bare feet cold on the hardwood. Moonlight bled through the blinds, painting stripes on Ben's race car bed. He was sitting up, eyes wide and glassy, staring at the closet. "Ben." He didn't turn. "He's here," he whispered. Annie's throat tightened. She flicked on the light. The closet door was open. Inside, tangled among Ben's sneakers and Legos, was a balloon. Red, twisted into the shape of a spider. Pinned to its bloated body was a Polaroid photo. Annie picked it up. It was a picture of Ben, taken through his bedroom window. He was asleep, his astronaut helmet on the pillow. Scrawled on the photo's white border in smeared grease paint. "Found you." Annie didn't sleep for 3 days. She nailed the closet shut. She installed motion lights outside Ben's window. She called the police, who took the Polaroid with latex gloves and asked, voice dripping with small-town skepticism, "You sure your ex-husband isn't pulling a prank?" But Ben changed. He stopped asking for peanut butter sandwiches cut into rocket ships. He drew pictures in crayon, crude, feverish sketches of a grinning face with too many teeth, hung in a starless sky. At night, Annie would find him standing at his bedroom window, forehead pressed to the glass, muttering numbers. 7, 7, 7. On the 4th night, the knocking started. It came from the basement. 3 soft raps, then silence. Annie stood at the top of the stairs, her phone's flashlight trembling in her hand. The door at the bottom was old, its paint blistered. Ben's voice drifted up from behind her. "He says you shouldn't look." She whirled. Her son stood in his astronaut pajamas, eyes half-lidded, a thread of drool on his chin. "Who says, Ben?" "Who?" Ben smiled. It wasn't his smile. The basement smelled of wet earth and copper. Annie's beam of light skittered over cobweb jars, a broken rocking horse, and finally, the far wall. Handprints. Dozens of them, small and pale, pressed into the concrete like fossilized butterflies. Children's handprints. Some fresh enough that the rust-colored residue beneath them still looked damp. Annie retched. That's when she heard the pop. A balloon, inflating itself in the dark. It emerged from the shadows, red, twisted into the shape of a lopsided crown. The clown's voice oozed from the corner where the light didn't reach, syrupy and rotten. Every king needs a queen. Annie ran. Up the stairs, slamming the door, driving screws into the frame with a power drill while Ben watched, humming a nursery tune she didn't recognize. The next morning, Mrs. Peeler from next door brought over a casserole. "Heard you've had some trouble," she said, her dentures clicking. "You know, the Grady boy lived here before you, sweet kid. Went missing last October. They found his sneakers in the crawl space filled with marbles." Annie's hands shook. Did they ever suspect someone? The old woman's eyes drifted to the window. Outside, the maple tree was skeletal, its branches clawing at the sky. There used to be a carnival back in the 80s, closed after incidents. Folks said one of the clowns stayed, that he likes to collect things. Collect what? Mrs. Peeler set down the casserole. "Collects happy families," she said in a concerned voice. The storm hit at midnight. Rain slashed the windows like nails. The power died, and Annie huddled with Ben under a blanket fort in the living room, flashlight between them. He hadn't spoken in hours, just stared at the closet door, now sealed with a cross made of kitchen knives. Pop! A balloon drifted into the room. Blue, twisted into the shape of a star. Ben reached for it. "No!" Annie slapped it away. It burst with a sound like a stifled scream, leaving a greasy smear on the wall. Ben began to cry. Not tears, thick, viscous fluid the color of motor oil. "He's mad now," he whispered. The house groaned. Something scrabbled beneath the floorboards. Click, click, click. Claws on wood. Annie's phone lit up with a notification, a voicemail from an unknown number. She pressed play, a wet, wheezing laugh. Then, "Come down, Annie. Bring the boy. We'll make crowns." Ben stood. His pupils had swallowed his irises, black and bottomless. "He says it's time." The basement door was open. Annie knew she should run. Take Ben, sprint into the storm, never look back. But the clown's voice slithered into her skull, sticky and sweet. "You'll only die tired." She descended. The basement was gone. In its place stretched a cavern, its walls pulsating with veins. A throne of bones sat at the center, draped in moth-eaten carnival flags. The clown lounged on it, his face sagging like melted wax. Dozens of children sat at his feet, motionless, their eyes replaced with glass marbles. The Grady boy was there, and others. "Annie," the clown crooned, "you'll fit right in." Ben walked toward him, entranced. "No!" Annie lunged, tackling her son to the dirt. The clown's grin split wider, his jaw unhinging like a snake's. Rows of needle teeth dripped black saliva. "Fine," he hissed. "We'll wear you first." Annie fought. She fought when the clown's hands, cold, smelling of birthday party rot, closed around her throat. She fought when he dragged her toward the throne, his breath like spoiled milk. She fought even as her vision tunneled, spotting Ben's astronaut helmet in the dirt, the power drill. She tucked it into her waistband. Her fingers closed around the trigger. The clown's teeth hovered an inch from her face. "Shh," he cooed. Daddy's here. Annie jammed the drill into his left eye. He screamed. A sound that wasn't a sound. A frequency that cracked the cavern's walls. The children collapsed into piles of old clothes and dust. Annie grabbed Ben, sprinting through the collapsing nightmare as the clown's shrieks pursued them. "You'll come back. You'll always come back." They moved again. A condo in the city, 14th floor, no closets. Ben talks now. Too much. About stars and black holes and the man who lives in the walls. Annie sleeps with the drill under her pillow. Tonight, as she checks the locks for the 47th time, she hears it. A faint pop from the bathroom. A single red balloon floats in the shower, twisted into the shape of a heart.